Welcome to the guide, Exile. Have you been desiring some more wonderful, ear-soothing, non-stop chaining freezes and shatters? Well, the Cold Conversion Spectral Throw Raider provides just that. This build is not only great to speed through maps shattering enemies with, but also to take on all endgame bosses with fairly budget gear. Now, rather than going the usual route for Elemental Spectral Throw, or more widely known as LE Buzzsaw, which makes use of a rare weapon with flat elemental damage, we will be making use of physical-based weapons and converting their damage into a single element. This gives us not only the benefit of being able to use elemental modifiers and penetration, but also physical modifiers and the choice between a few strong and cheap unique weapons that we can dual-wield for the dual-wielding damage bonus, rather than spending a fortune on a single perfect rare weapon. For this build, we make use of two Scourged Terror Claws as our main weapons of choice. We choose these not only because of their respectable base stats, but the unique affix that applies all minion damage bonuses to us. So with two claws equipped, we get a total of 140% increased damage from their hit recently affix, which is better than we can get with a strong elemental damage with attacks roll. To get our cold conversion, we will be taking the nodes through the notable Winter Spirit in the passive tree along with the unique gloves Hrim Sorrow for a total of 90% physical to cold conversion. This means we will be able to freeze and shatter enemies, providing not only that clean shatter sound, but safety and the ability to freeze enemies and most map bosses. Now let's get into some more details about the build. The Cold Conversion Spectral Throw Raider was envisioned as a quick mapping character with the ability to also take on some endgame bosses if chosen. Offensively, we make use of the skill Spectral Throw with an almost full cold conversion. Being that we convert damage from physical, we not only benefit from elemental modifiers and elemental penetration, but also physical modifiers. This means we have multiple ways of scaling our damage through the passive tree, gear, and flasks. Converting from physical also lets us fully benefit from the dual-wielding bonuses, which are 10% more attack speed, 20% more attack physical damage, and 15% additional chance to block. So we dual-wield two physical weapons, and as mentioned before, we are choosing the Scourged Terror Claws. For auras, we run Herald of Ice for its on-kill explosion effect, and Hatred for more cold damage. To amplify our damage even further, we will use Critical Strikes and Multiplier. Finally, we get the Keystone Point Blank from the tree. This will provide us with a strong first hit on enemies, allowing us to freeze and shatter most all map monsters on our initial toss. Defensively, we are going to be making use of Evasion and Dodge. We get evasion from gear and dodge from the Keystone Acrobatics and from our Ascendancy. We will also be using Vol Pack to ensure quick recovery from large hits, as well as keeping us on full life. We also gain a lot of defense from immediately freezing monsters that we hit with our Spectral Throw, making them completely inert. Finally, a quick Whirling Blades with Fortify is used to mechanically dodge big hits and quickly traverse terrain, while keeping up some defense. While mapping, you will be using Greater Multiple Projectiles to cover the screen in spectral weapons. Once you get to a boss, you swap Greater Multiple Projectiles to Slower Projectiles. This greatly amplifies your single target damage, but does make you move into close range, so be careful on bosses that you do not freeze. You will also drop an Ancestral Protector for more attack speed, and a Frost Bomb to slow and reduce the enemy's cold resistance. For those who have not played Spectral Throw can actually hit the same enemy numerous times at the end of its trajectory. This is important on single target, where you will want to align yourself such that the target is standing at the end of your Spectral Throw to get the best DPS possible. This is made slightly easier since you are able to freeze most map bosses from moving, keeping them right at the end of your trajectory. Some pros of the build include, this is a very fast mapping character. We have a quick and mechanically engaging playstyle. It is budget friendly as of me writing this guide. Raider gives us elemental ailment immunities while we are phasing, which is almost all the time. This means we only need bleed and curse removal flasks. Finally, we get to freeze and shatter enemies. Some cons of the build include, we cannot run elemental reflect maps. We cannot face tank all damage, so it requires some mechanical dodging and awareness. Finally, we have Vol Pact, which can lead to some discomfort if you are not used to having no life regen. Our class and Ascendancy choice is of course the Ranger and the Raider. This is an excellent all-around Ascendancy, providing good sources of damage and utility. Way of the Poacher provides us a passive way to be generating frenzy charges, which are very powerful charges for damage. Avatar of the Slaughter provides us more bonuses for each frenzy charge, on top of the benefits that they already provide, as well as another frenzy charge. Quartz Infusion grants us some more attack dodge, as well as phasing while we have Onslaught or are on full frenzy charges, which is all the time. Phasing allows us to pass through enemies, as well as making us appear ethereal. Finally, Avatar of the Veil grants us elemental damage, movement speed, spell dodge, and immunity to elemental ailments. For Ascendancy progression, I would follow this order. Within our passive tree, we get the following keystones. Acrobatics. This grants us 30% attack dodge for a single point investment. Point Blank. This gives us a 50% more multiplier for the majority of our initial Spectral Throw trajectory to hit packs and maps hard. For bosses, we will be hitting them at the turning point of the trajectory, where the Point Blank will have minor benefits but not negative. Vol Pact. This is of course to make our life leech as effective as possible, and to ensure that we are always near or at full life. Here is the complete endgame passive tree. Defensively, we pick up life, life leech, dodge, and minor evasion. Offensively, we pick up physical damage, elemental damage, critical strikes, and jewel sockets. I would follow this progression into the final tree. For bandits, we will be helping Alira for the plus 15% to all elemental resistances, and plus 20% to critical strike multiplier. This makes our gearing easier as well as getting some much needed critical strike multiplier. You will want to have most, if not all, of the frenzy charges spec'd by level 40 or when you do your normal lab. You will be able to consistently generate them after getting Way of the Poacher. You will want to wait until about level 55 to start speccing into the claw nodes in the upper right, since you won't be able to use claws until level 60 if you follow the leveling uniques. If you choose to use claws earlier, you can spec these nodes sooner. Some useful pantheons for the build include: for majors, any of the major pantheons are fine. However, Soul of the Brine King will not be useful if you follow the recommended items, in which we use Kaoms roots. For minor pantheons, we can use Soul of Yugal to reduce any reflected damage we might take, Soul of Tukahama for some more mitigation while attacking bosses and we're stationary, Soul of Relakesh for bleed avoidance and the ability to avoid being blinded since we are accuracy based. Here are the following gem links for the build. Support gem links are shown in order of importance. 4 links can go in the helmet, gloves, or boots. 3 links can go in the weapon or shield. All gems should be leveled to 20 unless labeled otherwise. This is generally to ensure that they are triggered by cast when damage taken, as it has a gem level requirement. For this setup, we are making use of damage on full life since it has been refactored from only working on melee damage to all damage sources. This gem will best be used once you have Vol Pact and can stay on full life while you're freezing enemies and staying out of harm's way. On bosses, you will want to swap greater multiple projectiles for slower projectiles. Added cold damage can also be swapped for cold penetration on Guardians and Shaper, as they have higher elemental resistances. Since we will be using Kaoms roots, we will lose one of our 4 links. Assassin's Mark will scale our critical damage as well as provide power charge generation. These do not need to be linked, as they are support skills for your damage. Frostbomb can remain at level 1 since its levels do not affect the cold penetration it provides, and only makes it require more intelligence. The only required unique for this build are the Hrimswaro gloves. These gloves provide 50% physical to cold conversion that we need to shore up the rest of our cold conversion. They can be equipped at level 9 and cost almost nothing. You do not need to upgrade the gloves since they only add burn damage, which we do not invest in or scale and will just make coloring them harder. Useful but not required uniques include the Scourge Terror Claws. These are a great choice for our weapons, as they are cheap and provide solid base damage. Since we now benefit from minion damage bonuses, the 70% increased minion damage on the weapons acts as a generic 70% increased damage. That means from dual wielding we gain a total of 140% generic damage with these weapons. I use and recommend these weapons. Touch of Anguish. These are another solid unique claw option as they have really good physical damage, high critical strike chance, and good attack speed. They are beat out in terms of final damage values by the Scourge Claws, but make a viable alternative. Kaoms Roots. These are excellent boots for this build, since we are in desperate need of flat life. They also provide stun immunity for when we are up close and personal with bosses. However, we will end up losing a 4-link. Even still, I use and recommend using these boots. At Ziri's Step. These are a good option for getting some more evasion, a bit of life, and spell dodge chance. Darkray Vectors. These are great for getting more damage as it provides a +1 to frenzy charges on top of dodge chance per frenzy charge. However, there is no life affix on these, making it more of an option for the skilled players to use, as you will be very low on life. Belly of the Beast. This is an excellent defensive chest as always. I use and recommend using this chest. However, you can also use a rare chest and be just fine. The Perfect Form. This is a good defensive chest if you can balance your resistances. It provides free phase acrobatics for spell dodge, Arctic armor for some flat mitigation, and a solid amount of evasion. Uriel's Fostering, the Ursa variant. This chest is more expensive, but a great offensive option as it provides critical strike chance, accuracy rating, as well as flat physical damage to attacks. Starkanja's Head. A good helmet for some solid defensive and offensive stats, however, the helmet slot is a great spot for getting intelligence and resistance on this build. Finally, Bisco's Collar. As required by law, a Bisco's can be used for mapping. Aside from the recommended uniques, we want to fill out the rest of our character with rare gear. Here are the affixes we want to look for on our gear, along with example gear that was used on my character. There are only a few requirements of your rare gear. On your helmet and jewelry, you will want to get intelligence rolls to help fill out your intelligence deficit, as we stay mostly on the right side of the passive tree. You will want to get at least 250 total flat accuracy on your jewelry or helmet. Since we have heavy dexterity investment, we do not need as much accuracy on gear. This is so that we are at or above 85% chance to hit, as we do not have resolute technique. I like to try and aim for 90% chance to hit, as it makes our hits and critical strikes occur without much fail. Enchantments. For the helmet, you want to look for a 40% Spectral Throw damage. If you use the Scourge Terror Claws, you can actually use a Bone Helmet, which has an implicit of minions deal 30 to 40% increased damage, providing just as much power to us. You will of course have less evasion with this base. For boots, there's a couple of options. If you plan to just do bossing, you'll want to get damage penetrates 10% of enemy resistances if you have not killed recently. If you are just mapping, the 16% increased attack and cast speed, if you have killed recently, is very useful. Corruptions. A very strong corruption to get is the +1 maximum frenzy charge on boots. This is easily acquired on Kaoms Roots, and I recommend getting this corruption over the boot enchantment. For recovery flasks, you will want to ensure that you have the following. A Divine Life Flask. You want this to be an instant, either bubbling or seething version. For utility flasks, you want to make use of the following. A Diamond Flask to help smoothen out our critical strike chance, and a Silver Flask providing us Onslaught, improving our overall character attack and movement speed. Here are some unique flask recommendations for the build. At Ziri's Promise. This flask provides a very welcome damage bonus, as well as some more life leech from the chaos damage that we deal. This is a great overall cheap flask. I recommend using this flask. The Wise Oak. This is a great cheap flask that provides a maximum of 15% elemental penetration. This flask works such that it will penetrate for your highest uncapped elemental resistance. So for us, we will want our cold resistance to be the highest uncapped resistance. I recommend using this flask. Make sure to watch my damage and elemental resistance video for more information on how resistances work and are named. Dying Sun. This flask provides us 2 more projectiles to our Spectral Throw, as well as providing increased maximum fire resistance. This is only really useful for map clearing, as we cannot shotgun single enemies with our numerous projectiles. It can also mess up our resistance balance for our Wise Oak. Taste of Hate. This flask provides us with some offense through our physical damage added as cold, and defense by taking physical damage as cold damage while also increasing our maximum cold resistance. A very expensive but powerful flask. Leveling this build can be quite easy with the proper unique items. It will, however, be quite low on life since we are not strength based, and will require getting either some rare leveling gear with life, or just playing a bit more mechanically. Here are some recommended leveling uniques that you can make use of, listed in order of equipment level. We will be using an assortment of weapon types while leveling, not really making use of claws until level 60, as there aren't that many great claws to level with. This is fine since we mainly scale projectile and elemental damage in the tree. I highly recommend using the Cauterizer at level 40 due to the insane damage that weapon deals, especially with all of the elemental scaling we are doing. Elrion minus mana cost Jewelry is also very useful until we make use of a Thief's Torment. I highly recommend using this unique ring as it provides excellent life and mana sustain for your Spectral Throw. Without either of these, you will need a mana flask. As for your skill gem progression, I recommend doing the following. At level 1, you will want to get Shrapnel Shot, Split Arrow with Pierce and Onslaught. You will want to use Shrapnel Shot on single target, and Split Arrow for general clearing. You will also want to get a Spectral Throw to begin leveling. At level 4, grab a Frost Bomb and Ancestral Protector. You will have to purchase these from another player or get them from Lily from another character. At level 8, you will want to equip the Screaming Eagles and swap to Spectral Throw, Lesser Multiple Projectiles, added cold damage, and added fire damage. At level 10, grab a Leap Slam for crossing gaps and ledges. You can also pick up a Whirling Blades, but you will not use it until much later. At level 18, you will want to begin using Herald of Ash and Herald of Ice. You will want to link Spectral Throw with elemental damage with attacks, added cold damage, and lesser multiple projectiles. You will also want to grab and start leveling a damage on full life. At level 24, you will drop Herald of Ash for Hatred. And at level 31, you will get slower projectiles, which you will swap with lesser and greater multiple projectiles for boss encounters. From here, you will want to be adding in all the other skill gems as listed in the gems section. Ice Bite is best used once you get your first Ascendancy along with all the frenzy charges from the tree. You can also use a Stone or Chaos Golem while leveling to provide some more defense. Make sure to use defensive flasks such as Jade, Stibnite, and or Granites while leveling to smoothen out your missing or weak gear. As always, Spectral Throw is an insanely fun skill, and made even more satisfying by means of cold shattering. You get a dynamic projectile to throw and pull around as you quickly whirl through a map, along with watching enemies pop as it passes through them. I highly recommend this build to anyone who likes a quick playstyle that utilizes some mechanical dodge and somewhat tactical gameplay. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, Exile.